Hey everybody, Dutch Sense here, 1:22 p.m. Central Time on Sunday, May 3rd, 2015. And I've got you looking at Earthquake 3D. We're looking at the continental United States. I'm going to do an update really quick on just what's happened over the last 24 to 48 hours. Guys, it has been just phenomenal. Yesterday, I'm not joking, I pulled a 30-hour day up for 24 hours and then pushed it an additional almost 12 hours trying to cover all of this. And my wife is my witness, my friend's Tad is my witness. I pushed it till I couldn't take it anymore. And trying to cover all of this has been insane, guys. So let me just get into it. We had two back-to-back earthquakes last night right before I crashed out, and that was down in Mississippi. That was followed by a 3.2 due west. Look at this, due west in Dallas, Texas. And did a full website post on this. Traced back each earthquake location to its epicenter, and let me just go ahead and show you what's down in Texas. Okay, here's our 3.2 earthquake. Here's a 3.4 that struck almost exactly a month ago within just a few blocks. And right to the west, a frac well. And the Texas Railroad Commission said there aren't any frac wells nearby when they were denying fracking earthquakes just a month ago, denying that fracking causes earthquakes. Down in Texas, they even went off, literally made disparaging comments about people who research and study these things. And I've got something to say, the Texas Railroad Commission. If you've got children in the room right now, guys, turn down the speakers or put on some headphones, because I've got two words to say to the Texas Railroad Commission. I could say this because I'm on YouTube, and I don't have any kind of professional credibility that I'm trying to maintain. So let me tell you guys, go fuck off. I guess that's three words. Let's just say fuck off. Okay? That's all I got to say to the Texas Railroad Commission. I'm going to cut a little slack to the people out in California, because at least you've got another excuse for your earthquakes. You've got some active fault zones in the region. However, when you see multiple earthquakes strike the same location here, and there's no doubt about it that these are oil wells and frac wells, you don't deny that the earthquake that occurs below the operation is related to the operation above it. Especially when the operations are proved to, when they're above a fault zone, to put pressure on the fault zone below. And these happen right within a few hours of each other, again, to the south down here. And if you connect this across, okay, here's our 3.9 that we were just looking at in Los Angeles. Here's our 3.2 in Dallas. Here's our back-to-back 3.0 and 3.2 in Mississippi, all within a few hours of each other. Then to the north, of course, if you haven't heard the news, a 4.2 magnitude earthquake struck in south central Michigan. And that's on top of the 2.7 that struck in South Quebec and the 2.9 that struck on the New Madrid. Again, all in the last 24 to 48 hours here in the States, and this is just showing us 2.5 and greater. If we were to look at the smaller stuff, we'd really spend 2 hours getting into where all these are occurring. One that I haven't looked up yet, but which I'm guessing is related to volcanism. Let's go look it up and find out. The 3.5 here near Hawthorne Lake, Nevada. Now this comes on top of all the steam plume activity, all the volcanic activity, the new announcement of an eruption off the west coast this past week. So let's put the coordinates in and go see what's at the location at the California-Nevada border. And I've already been talking so much about the California-Nevada border over the last several weeks, 2 weeks, that to see an earthquake strike there now, again, is no shock, but it's definitely something we need to look into and find out what's there. So, we'll wait for Google Earth to open here. And let's go ahead and turn off these photos. That might be taking a little extra time to load here. Ah, okay. Look what's just to the south right here, guys. And in case you're wondering what this is, let me come in at an angle so you can get an idea of how high this is off the desert floor. Okay. Now, these are old lava flows from an old butte. You can still make out the cone here on the butte. There's no name on here. They don't have this named as anything, but there's no doubt about it. It's definitely an old lavic flow. And we can zoom in here and make out. Let's just wait for it. There we go. Old lavic fields that extend far out from the original cone. And this is part of a multiple volcanic complex here. Each one of these, here we got Aurora Crater, we've got Aurora Peak, and Mount Hicks, all three volcanic related, no doubt about it, and it's part of a greater volcanic field right here. Here's Hawthorne, just to the east. So if there's any question, this area down here to the south is volcanic. You can also look over here to the east. And you can make out that we've got some old cones here as well. And you can make out the rock, no doubt about it, buttes. And these are old lavic flows. You can see the difference between the flow and the desert sand. Each one of these volcanic related guys. No doubt about it. I mean, there's no doubt. So this is part of the greater Mono Lakes volcanic complex. So when you see the other earthquakes that have happened here over the past several weeks and months, this is the cluster spot, and it's because it's volcanic related. No doubt about it, there it goes. So let's get back over to Earthquake 3D, take another look at the earthquakes that have happened here, and you can see now this earthquake fracking, this earthquake volcanic, this earthquake fracking, this earthquake tectonic, and tectonic going all the way up the East Coast. There are no fracking operations at the Michigan location, at the southern Missouri location on New Madrid, or up in South Quebec, which is nothing but lakes at this location here. So tectonic movement to the east, to the south, fracking, and to the west, volcanic. So you might say, well, what's this earthquake up here? You know, the one right up here at the far northwest portion of the craton. If you don't already know, they've done new underground measurements to confirm, here's Yellowstone, where my mouse is, that the Yellowstone magma chamber, the upper magma chamber, extends far west into Idaho, and the lower magma chamber is 11,500 cubic miles. That's 11 plus Grand Canyons worth, their estimations, not mine, the professionals, that extends north into Montana and northwest into Idaho, going down many miles. So when you see earthquakes happen here throughout central Idaho, going up into northwest Idaho and into Montana, that's associated with the magma chamber at Yellowstone. And it also is the location of one of the largest earthquakes to ever strike the Intermountain West. That was in the 1950s. That was the Hebgen Lake, Montana earthquake, and that was just northwest of the park as well. No doubt that was related to the magma chamber as well. They didn't know at the time in the 1950s. Now we know. And that's with the new measurements released just this past week. Now internationally, we're looking at the last 48 hours of earthquakes. There was a 5.9. USGS recorded it as a 5.7. This produced a tsunami off the shores of Japan. Tsunami warning and a small 50-centimeter wave actually hit. I'll put a link down below to the video report on that from Japanese news so you guys can watch that. And then transferring west from the large earthquake location in Nepal last week, we started to see a flurry of earthquakes develop across Turkey and South Europe. So these are all things that we're going to have to keep an eye on over the next 7 days, guys. Now 6 days, since 1 day has already expired on the earthquake forecast. All I can say, guys, watch the earthquake forecast, have a plan, and be prepared just in case. With all the activity going on elsewhere, it's time now to develop your plan. North America, the earthquakes over the last 7 days give away the edge of the North American plate. And the North American craton is something I've been talking about for a long while now. You can see the edge of it has been perturbed from the northwest, extending down through Colorado, south, and then back up to the northeast. And we do need to be on watch on the East Coast still for possible movement, and this would be right along the coast because of all the other movement happening along the edge of the craton. When we see displacement along the edge, the areas adjacent always move. If you live in California, already issued a watch for your area, still have 6 more days to go on that, but it should be obvious now that when you see clusters of 3.0 earthquakes happening, you see dormant volcanoes moving, fracking operations moving in your area, especially from central to South California, watch out down here to the south. And since now it's been, let's take a look, 7 days since we've seen any noteworthy earthquake movement up here to the north, that lets us know from the volcano north to Vancouver, BC. Now it's a really small area we need to watch. We can cut half of Cascadia off and say, look, the volcanic eruption here is relieving the pressure off the coast of Oregon. This might explain why we haven't seen anything over that 5.0 range in Oregon, off Oregon, but just to the south, we saw that borderline 7.0, also a 5.5 strike down here to the south, the Napa, California large earthquake, and then a series of 5s hit the Gorda Escarpment right here along this ridge. And just to the north, we saw along the coast of Vancouver, BC, again a 7.0 last year, and then a 6.2 just struck last week, a little over 7 days ago, up here to the north. So the area to the north and the area to the south, which kind of cuts out Oregon and Washington, luckily, but we see the movement happening to your east at the Yellowstone magma chamber, which I don't think that's a good trade-off. I mean, if we start seeing earthquakes at Yellowstone or an earthquake on Cascadia, both have equally destructive capabilities, one more than the other if there's an eruption. Now, we're not saying there's going to be an eruption at Yellowstone. There will be large earthquakes that precede any eruption at Yellowstone. So if you start seeing large earthquakes up near Yellowstone, that's when you need to start worrying about an eruption. Right now, we're looking for a large earthquake threat at Yellowstone, based upon all this magma chamber movement. You can see these 3 earthquakes here. That's associated with the magma chamber. The magma chamber is being perturbed down below due to the pressure from the west-northwest. So pressure here puts pressure nearby on the magma chamber, causes release up here. That puts pressure on the edge of the craton, which displaces the entire edge time and time again, and we see earthquakes pop off Colorado, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and sometimes eastward, southeastward. The previous southeast earthquakes weren't down in Mississippi. It was eastern Tennessee and the Carolinas. Right in here is where we saw the movement the last time the plate was displaced from up here. And then that displaced the East Coast, and we saw earthquakes in Connecticut and New Brunswick. This was several weeks ago, going into a couple months ago. Now it's happening again, just translating a little bit further westward, still up the edge of the craton, and displacing further places that we don't normally see earthquakes. Everybody was shocked in Connecticut, due east of Michigan. Everybody's shocked over here when the swarm hit there just a few weeks, months ago. Now you're seeing it here. And it happens each time after we see big movement down here, which then, of course, follows big movement up here in the northwest. Big movement in the northwest caused big movement in the south. Big movement in the south caused big movement up to the east coast. The whole thing gets displaced when the west gets moved. And the west got moved last week, therefore this got moved this week. And now we need to watch, now that this has moved this week, we need to see it, watch, press back to the west, and start over again. So we've got 3 main areas to watch: Southern California, Northern California, and right along this little itty-bitty strip up here just north of Vancouver Island, BC. And didn't get into Hawaii. You know, Hawaii, guys, yesterday that happened again. If you aren't familiar with what's going on in Hawaii, did a full blog post on this as well. So in Hawaii, yesterday, a new surge of lava occurred. Look at this. Okay, here's the lava lake. It's normally down, far down. You can't even see it. It's surged up, spilled over, and you can see the fresh lava here as of yesterday morning. And we'll back this out again. Take another look here. Now, really quick, while I've got you on here, why don't we just go check and see what's going on there right now? Did it go up or down since this report? Usually when it spews out lava, it goes down a little bit. Let's go check. It's still right at the top. Okay, now you can see a little bit of a lip on here, and that pressed all that lava out here over the past 24 hours. It most likely is going to happen again, and it's probably going to eventually, not probably, it really will eventually drain out like it did in 2011. And when it drains out, that's when we see new lava flows on the flanks of Hawaii on Kilauea. And that sometimes makes international news depending on what it hits. This past time, it almost took out an entire town. The previous time, there was a fracture in 2011. Luckily, it happened sort of out in the middle of nowhere in Hawaii, which very few people were actually affected by that eruption in 2011. And all this lava drained out in 2011. So I didn't mean for this to be a really long earthquake update, but man, you know, in the past 24 hours, that sure is a lot of activity to see. In the last 7 days, let's look at everything let's try to take it up to those 3.0 and greater earthquakes. There we go. This is the last 7 days of 3.0 and greater earthquakes. The areas stand out that we need to watch. No doubt about it. And when you see the activity like this, the activity up here to the north, nothing, that means we're rebuilding to the north. And when you see no large earthquakes released to the south, but a cluster like this, let's see, how many we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 different earthquakes at that location over the past 7 days, all 3.0 and greater, most of which happening at dormant volcanoes to the east. So the 3.0, the 3.5, also down here the 3.0 in Baja, those all volcanic related. Then we have our fracking earthquakes, 3.9, 3.4, 3.1 in Coalinga. Those are the only areas that moved. Dormant volcanoes and fracking operations showing 3.0 activity, which means stress is building there as well. But again, can't drive this point home enough, guys. This activity down here to the south, Mississippi, also up here to the north, Michigan, everybody was caught off guard by that, including me. You know, I look for weird earthquakes from time to time, but even I'm shocked by the Michigan activity. That means that the pressure really is there, and it's right on the edge. Guys, we're at a time of heightened earthquake alert, okay? Be safe.